Good morning. Should I say it? Good morning. So was it a good party last night? Oh, come on. We're not here to be sleeping. Was it a good party? Oh, thank you. I have a fan club up there. How nice. Okay, so you are the brave ones. I'm honored, because if it sounds like it was a good party. And for you to be here at 9 o'clock, I love you. You're a great-looking audience. So, today, we're going to take a look at how things are connected. What tools to use to speed up the Office 365 deployment and to avoid some painful moments and also to consume more time than needed. And of course, avoid those horrible moments that you can run into when you do something for the first time. Because we want this to be fun, don't we? We want this to be a success story so we can relax and maybe do things that we enjoy even more than deploying Office 365. I don't know if there's such a thing, but I got this from a friend, and he says, yes, this is funny too. Okay, my name is Magnus Björk. I work as a consultant and run a company called Altitude 365 out of Stockholm. I started off with Exchange in 1996 and has done nothing but Exchange since. Yes. I'm an grumpy old man, and I've seen a few mailboxes, and I've seen a few trends. And some of this experience and my passion for Exchange led me to the fact that I'm a Microsoft MVP. I used to be Exchange MVP for 6 years, and I'm now an Office 365 MVP. So the latest version of Exchange was my 8th version. And I like to think about it as an Office 365 as my 9th version. Because so much things happen when you take this step into Office 365. And that is kind of a strange thing, isn't it? Because we don't pet the servers anymore. So you would think that you would have less things to do, but it's actually quite the opposite. It's just better value for all those things you do. I'm proud to be back at NIC. This is my 4th NIC, 3rd time as a speaker. The first time was mostly party. I have a blog. It's at altitude365.com/blog, and I also have a Twitter handle, of course. So, my questions to you. Who's here for the scripts? One guy, I'm sorry, I will disappoint you. Who's here for the demos? I'm so glad we had a party last night, because I don't want hands right now. Sorry, there will be no scripts and no demos. And what a bad thing to start with. Because that's all the fun in a presentation, isn't it? Whoa, so this will be death by PowerPoint. No, I rolled up my sleeves, as you can see. It won't be death by PowerPoint. It will be real knowledge. This is the essence of what we've been doing for the last years. We have migrated somewhere around 40,000 mailboxes to Office 365, and we've seen a few things. So I want you to walk away from this room in roughly an hour and say, okay, I know some things not to do, and I know a few things to do. But I would rather like that you remember the things you shouldn't do, because that's how we save time in those painful moments. And yes, I've seen quite a lot of those. My most common mission is to help customers who run into problems. Okay, we tried Office 365, but it didn't work. Well, it works for quite a lot of million people, so I would think that it could work for you as well. But there are some challenges. And these are the challenges I see. Everyone buys Office 365, so they purchase the licenses. There's a lot of companies out there who already bought the licenses for Office 365. They have the rights to use it, but it's not being deployed. It's not being used. And what a waste. It was like when I told my girlfriend that, yes, you're very beautiful, but I like you for other things, and she said, what a waste. Yeah. It is a waste, because Office 365 is the best platform out there. So if you have the rights and you already paid for it, you should use it. But this is actually a huge problem. This is kind of similar. Pilots are carried out, but that's where it stops. This is two things that I'm kind of worried about, and I'd like to know why. So this is why this session is here. So the third one, and this is actually also a problem. There are like billions of people knowing SharePoint and Exchange and all the products involved in Office 365. But we hear from customers that, oh, we're so glad to finally found you, because we had all these questions, and we know that we can ask the on-prem guy, but then there's always a difference. Yes, there is a difference, and that's why I like to call Office 365 my 9th version of Exchange, because it's more complex in a way, especially before you get deployed. But once you're there, well, then it's much more simple. But there's a challenge in the beginning. And then, and this is kind of, you wouldn't believe me if just said this, so I will have to motivate this. It's Office. Yes, I mean the client on the computer. That's a huge challenge. You know why? Because we had Office for ages. It's been around forever. And now suddenly, it needs to be updated to work. So, okay, let's try. What's your version of Office? And I mean build number. When was it last updated? You have no idea, right? No. Anyone who has an idea about your Office client build number? And you are my heroes. I love you, because you were here at 9 o'clock. So, and I bet you know quite a lot about these things. But no, you don't pay attention to when Office was updated. And that is a problem, because Office 365 actually requires a correct Office version. Is there a simple way to get that? Oh, come on. Yes, there is, of course. It's the click-to-run version of Office that's included in Office 365. Of course, because that's evergreen, always updated and so on. We will talk about that. So these are the challenges that I see. So how do we avoid them? Well, it's simple. We plan. And we plan. And we plan again. Do you think it's boring? No, it's not, because this is where all your knowledge comes into place. This is where you need to flex those muscles and show that, okay, I know this stuff and we don't want to run into problems, so we kind of need to think about this before. So what are the things we need to plan? Well, sadly, it's not port numbers or firewalls or even DNS. It's your business requirements. Why will you use Office 365? What's the business driver in it? What's in it for the organization? Because don't come to me and say, okay, we're just going to do one more upgrade. I've done that for 15 plus years. It was super boring, so I quit. That's where I started Office 365, because we don't use the stuff. How many of you are exchange consultants or infrastructure consultants? Yeah, quite a lot. So you know how it works. Every 3 years, you get a phone call, and you go to the customer, and then you migrate to the server to a new version. How many times have you ever had the phone call from a customer asking you, okay, so now we have this super duper new Exchange version. How do we use it? That is depressing, isn't it? Because that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be used. And now we have the opportunity, because we won't pet the server anymore. We will be there to hand out real business value. So take the opportunity to really see, to ask the organization, what are your requirements? What would you love if I can provide for you? And you will see that they will do just that, love you. And that is funny, because you can really provide business value now. And I know I sound like a priest or something, but it's true. It's a revolution. Hallelujah. We need to think about the network as well. And we are fortunate in the Nordic countries, and you would think that around the world by now that we don't have to think about bandwidth and things like that. But it's actually not true. We do quite a lot of international assignments as well, and we don't have to travel far before we go into bandwidth issues. We had a customer in Germany who said, we can't migrate to Office 365 because of bandwidth restrictions. Because it will take us like 25 years to upload all our data. It wasn't really true, but yes, it's a perception. We need to think about these things. And how hard can it be? We just need port 443 from the cloud and in. Yes, pretty much. But there are other things to think about. And in the end of this session, I have a few what we've seen, notes from the field, and where things go wrong. And you will see that network is involved in quite a few of those. Security. I will have a session about Office 365 security, and hopefully the things you've never seen about security in Office 365 before. No, that's not really true. Of course, you've seen a lot, but maybe you haven't seen a few of those things. But security is actually a thing to think about. And it used to be that the impression was that it's less secure to go to the cloud. So, have any of you ever been to a Microsoft Office 365 data center? No. If you ever have the opportunity, go there, because it's so much fun and boring. And the boring part is the waiting, because when you get there, you have your ID, you hand that over, you get a paper says, okay, you are allowed to go to this room, you get a geotagged key, and if you ever avoid your route to that room, it's wasted. It's a super duper strict environment. People who are going to fix stuff, if they're going to change your hard drive or something, well, they don't really do that, but they have a key that goes to one rack. If they ever try to use it in another rack, well, it's destroyed. People, they will need to hand over all this stuff. And that's just the physical security. So, I will be very comfortable with saying that the security is way better than anything I have seen on my on-prem days. And I've been to pretty cool customers. But what do we need to think about? Well, for one example, I have customers who said, no, we can't use Outlook Anywhere, or RPC over HTTP. We can't use that because that's not secure enough. Then you have a problem, my friend. If you can't use Outlook Anywhere and you want to go to the cloud, well, that's an issue. But then you might have to think about why shouldn't we use Outlook Anywhere? Because it's never been hacked or anything like that. So, the other things about security, who will run the shop? Because we had one guy, he was God in our Exchange environment. Should he still be God? Should we maybe let someone else in and let him be closer to the organization because he has those skills? Because that's really an opportunity as well. Think about the security model and your requirements as well, of course. And the last thing, the clients. And I can't stress this enough, because Outlook is actually a great client and a huge asset, but it's also a problem if we do it the old dinosaur style of installing it and patching it. And of course, one of the things that is always present in these discussions is cost. So give the customer a business case, because there's a great business case. Anyone who says that, okay, Office 365 is more expensive, well, I'm willing to challenge that. And I bet you're a hoster. No, I'm just kidding. But there's a perception that if you come to a certain level, it's cheaper to run it in-house. I've never seen that, and I do quite a lot of business cases. We will also need to plan redundancy. And that's a strange thing, isn't it? Because we had this one server in our basement, and it worked for years. And now we're moving to the most redundant platform there is, and we need to think about redundancy. Strange. Yes, but we might have some requirements. For the really small shops, this isn't the problem, but for the enterprises, it is. So how do we deal with DearSync or AAD-Sync, or there are so many names at things right now, or ADFS? Should we really have our own ADFS servers, or should we not? And these are questions. I will get back to those specific. So how do we get there, and what the things to do and not to do? Well, take my advice. As we are in a non-English speaking country here as well, you might not have English as your default language in your browser. have English as your default language in your browser when you sign up for your tenant. You might run into some SharePoint issues if you have Norwegian or Swedish or something else later on. So that's a great start. Sign up for the Enterprise E free trial. There's a lot of different SKUs, but that's probably the one you want if you're not a really small shop. Your tenant name. Okay, so Office 365. I can just sign into this portal and I get a new tenant every time I sign up for a trial. Yes, you do. So I can just redo that. Yes, you can. But the fact is that too many customers sign up for something that sounds pretty good. If my company is Altitude, I probably say, okay, Altitude something. And that, or I might use, that's a good thing if we do it like that. Or I might be like, okay, Altitude test blah, 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 or Altitude Donald Duck or something. That's a bad thing, because it will probably work pretty well, so it will become a production environment. So be careful about your naming conventions. You need to use that. And if you do use a name that you want to get rid of, then you need to do that by support, because the tenant name stays there. You will need support for that, and that's quite a complicated story, actually. Sign up with a dedicated admin user. So this is funny, because the first, this sounds really simple, I realize that. The first time when you sign up, you will be asked to fill in your name and last name and so on and so on. So in my case, Magnus Björk. Well, fine. It's ridiculous how many times people have asked me, I can't find my admin user. No, because it's not named admin as the username, but it's displayed with a display name. So when people are looking for admin, they don't find it. Yes, I realize it's ridiculous, but I've been asked that question so many times. So do that. As soon as you're up and running, you need to add your custom domains and so on. And there's nothing strange about this. You log on to a portal, you select what domains you want, and then you add your custom SMTP domain and so on. And you verify them. And when we come to the verifying part, you need to add a DNS record in your DNS. And it says, okay, you can add a TXT record and a MX record. I don't know why they went for the MX record, because it's stupid, because it makes people feel like, oh, am I changing my mail routing here? No, you're not. You're just verifying, and that's not a valid host name, so you wouldn't change anything. But go for the TXT. It feels better. And then you're verified and you're up and running. And the DNS stuff is probably the hardest thing here. You should just wait after you enter your DNS, of course, as usual with DNS. Nothing strange about that. Here are some things to think about. So, security it was. What will I be authenticated against? Should I be authenticated to the cloud directly with a cloud identity? Or should I have password sync or password hash sync with like dir sync or AAD sync? Or should I go the federated route? Of course, this is the cool stuff, and this is the simple stuff. So I wonder, which one is best? What do you think? Shout out. Just tell me, what's the best thing here? Oh no, you're not allowed to sleep. Not during my sessions. What do you think? Any idea? Depend on leads? Needs. Yes. Yes, of course it does. Of course, and if we have a lot of SharePoint usage and that kind of stuff and other apps that will need that one single sign-on and so on, yes, it's great. But I was thinking on a higher level, I don't mean to be rude, but with a different view. Because the nirvana of authentication would be that I only have one identity everywhere, wouldn't it? Okay, maybe not to some strange sites where I don't mean to, but no, we don't go there. So, in this case, it's super simple. And simplicity is a good thing, isn't it? If we only have one ID, it's stored in the cloud, well, we can log on from anywhere and we are not dependent on anything else, and that's my thing here. Because as soon as we walk up this scale, we get dependencies. Not a huge one in the middle, but over here. So, as I mentioned, we have this one server in the basement with Exchange on it. We can always log on. We can use Outlook anywhere through the firewall, wherever we are. It just works. So we go to Office 365 and we choose the federated route. So what would you suggest to this customer of a few hundred seats that had this one server? Of course, they had Active Directory and so on as well. Well, I think you should have 2 WAP servers and 2 ADFS servers. Well, hold on, that's 4 new servers when I was replacing one, or I thought I was replacing one. So that might be something that's hard to melt for a customer. So don't be scared of the others, but know when to use them. So yes, if you're going the federated way, of course it's when you have needs for single sign-on and other apps that will authenticate. And we'll see shortly what happens. But there are some, this is nirvana for me. I use, my personal account is a cloud only. I love that. So, enough said about that. Your credentials stored in the cloud, and that's it. With the stuff that comes in Azure AD Premium and so on, and you can join your Windows 10 computer to the Azure AD, that rocks. So if you go the password synced way or the identity synced way with DRSync or AD Connect, this is really what you need to do every time before you even try. You run a tool called ID Fix. It's super simple. You just download it, run it, and with credentials, I ask my Active Directory server for our identities, and it will tell you when things are wrong. And you can't imagine how many times things are wrong with your AD accounts. For example, UPN name, user principal name. They should always have the format of your primary SMTP address, because your user will always think it's a SMTP address. So, if it's not, we need to fix that. And IDFix runs through all the accounts, look at them, see, do I find any strange things like dashes or question marks or anything else, and it comes up with, okay, I want to do this, and then you're good to go. And then you can run dsync or AAD sync. It's a great, and dsync or AAD sync, we should say AAD sync, but everyone knows it's a dsync, so yeah, it's the AAD sync, it's the new version. So it's super simple, but there are some things to think about here as well. For example, what should I sync? What parts of my Active Directory should I sync to the cloud? So we have this OU of users. Should we only do that? Or should we do the whole shebang? Well, it really depends on discipline. Because I see a lot of times that when we run into problem that, oh, why didn't this work? No, because we choose to sync one OU of users, and now we suddenly created some user somewhere else, which means the metadata for that account doesn't get synced. So if you have a strict discipline saying, okay, users will only end up in this OU, and especially with test accounts that you do testing with, often end up outside of those OUs, so you do the test, it doesn't work, but it would have worked for the user that was really in the correct OU. So yeah, that's chasing ghosts. It's a bad thing. So syncing the whole AD, it's not a bad thing. It used to be the only supported way. Now it's supported to sync selected parts of your AD as well. Federated ID. I spoke about that briefly. That it's the cool thing. It's really super. I love federated ID. There are people saying that, oh, it's the only way you can do it. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. And people make laugh of the dear-synced way or something. I don't think it's. You said it perfectly. It's the need. But, and the big but here is, should we take the responsibility of these identity, the dance that goes on when you try to log on to the portal and goes down to your on-prem servers and request the tickets and so on? Is that a responsible we want? That's the big question, I think. Or should we think about maybe having this in Azure? And these are the planning questions. I know it might not be, okay, here's the silver bullet, it solves everything. But if you ask these questions before, you will save a lot of time. That's the motto of this session. So there's a lot of advantages with federated identity. It's super simple for your users, and soon enough the Outlook clients and the Link clients can take advantage of these features as well. It started to rolling out, but it's not the silver bullet for everything, and do mind the responsibility. So what else have we got? How can we get to Office 365? This is probably the area where most go wrong. Because there are quite a lot of ways. As you can see the matrix, I'm not going to go into all the specific details. But think about which way will we go before we go. Because this is a lot of projects that stops here. They get too complex or not complex enough or feature-rich enough, so that's why it stops. This is a huge thing. And we could always do IMAP. Okay, will your users be happy if we only take the mail in the inbox? Andy Malone had a session about the different migration strategies yesterday, so I'm not going to go into them. But you need to think about what suits your need again, and to choose the correct one, because then magic happens. And it doesn't have to be a hybrid. That is the most complex way, and most of the times it doesn't have to be an IMAP either. It could be somewhere in the middle of those. This is a super stolen slide. Stolen from Office Click to Run, because I think you should rethink your application delivery. And I'm thinking of Office here, because the Click to Run version of Office is always updated. You always have the latest version. You can have it side by side with your legacy Office version if you like. Please be advised that you're not supposed to use the legacy version. It can be there because if you have a third-party application that needs those DLLs or something to work, fine, keep it. Please remove the icons from the start menu so people don't use them by mistake, because this is a super common thing. Office will reassociate all associations with files, so then it will default start the legacy version again. So don't, but it can be kept there, but hide the icons for the end user. Make it simple for them. So why do I think it's so important with the Outlook client? Or yeah, because it's mostly the Outlook client. Because the service constantly evolve. There's updates all the time. And it was last August, I think, when there was a kind of a big change in the service, and a lot of MSI deployed Office clients just stopped working. And that will happen. So what's the great thing about Click to Run? Well, yes, I said it's always updated. It's super fast to install. I installed it on my test machine that I will use for my demos in my security session later on. It took like 4 minutes or something to a virtual machine over a slow internet connection. It's just super great, super fast, and I can't imagine why we still would like to use the traditional MSI package. And to be honest, and I don't mean to scare, but it's actually, you might be in a issue with your licenses if you have purchased Office 365 and you're still installing your old MSI package. You have a year to transform in some cases, and so you should think about that. Okay, so what do we see go wrong? This is probably... This list could be really long, but I've taken the most common ones. AutoDiscover. It's a great feature, isn't it? You should all stand up, scream, yes, Magnus, it's a great feature. Yeah, I love your passion. It is. Because it configures our clients. And we find all our URLs for everything and blah, blah, blah. What's the constant problem with AutoDiscover? That there's a lot of people that haven't really understood what it's for and how it works. Externally, it's quite simple. You have the DNS entry, autodiscover.yourdomain.com, and we connect that and hopefully get to the Exchange server on port 443. Fine. And we download this XML. No, we don't. We order that XML. And if we start to think about it like that, it will be clear. Because what happens when the client wants that XML file, the AutoDiscover.xml, is that we actually take the information we got about ourselves. So in my case, magnus.bjork@altitude365.com and my password. That's what I give. And in return, I get that XML file. Because that's built every time for me, every time I ask. It's not a file that's on the file system there. It's here's for you, sir, table for you, specially made, every time. So what's the magic sauce in this? Yes, because Exchange will look at its configuration right now. See, where is Magnus mailbox? Well, it's here. Okay, what are the external URL and internal URLs for every virtual directory we have configured? And then hand them over in that XML file. Okay? This means that if we have a mistake in our configuration in Exchange, we will actually hand out the wrong information every time. So AutoDiscover is a great feature, but it's also a super great way to totally spoil all client configuration. You just alter your configuration in Exchange and you will totally ruin all the configuration on your clients. It's a must to have AutoDiscover work before you go Office 365 if you're going not with the PST or the IMAP migration, but any of the others, staged or cutover, or so you must have a working AutoDiscover. And of course, we get to a certificate bullet point later on, but certificate is really important here. Mail flow. This is also a planning question. A lot of planning should go into mail flow if we have a more advanced mail flow. For one example, how many of you has a Edge, a Microsoft Edge server? No, I don't see any hands. I'm not surprised. How many of you has some other SMTP gateway? I see a lot of hands, because that's what everyone has, like Iron Port or anything else. Those are not supported. So when you will have mail flow from Office 365 down to your on-prem servers, if you're in a hybrid, for example, you cannot have mail going through that Iron Port or other SMTP gateway. The only supported solution is your Edge. And when I say you can't not, will it work? Maybe. But it's not supported. And you might run into a few problems with coexistence. They might see like the X headers different and so on. And then one again, mail flow. You should of course also plan. If you have business requirements saying that all mail must go through our on-prem environment, then you should route them. Always route mail to you. You might, for example, have a journaling software that you can't use in the cloud. So you need all mails to go to your on-prem servers before they are sent out. It's of course possible, but it needs to be planned. These could also be, we have customers that don't want to send emails out of Sweden if they can avoid it, so they do it like that. Those are maybe not hard facts, because email can actually pop around on the internet quite a bit. But you can have those kind of configurations. But it needs to be think about in advanced. Outlook, I spoke a lot about Outlook, so I won't bore you with more how important it is to have the client updated. IP address and firewalls. This sounds like 1999 or something. But what I mean is there's a lot of IP addresses associated with Office 365. So when you open up, for example, port 25 for SMTP down to your on-prem Exchange servers, you shouldn't open up that for anyone or any. You should enter the IP addresses that Microsoft used. And those are specifically handed out it's a lot of them, but they are specified in the service description, and they are easy to find. Just Google for Office 365 IP addresses, and you need those for Exchange Online or EOP. They change. They get updated. They add more servers and need more IPs. So it's not on a daily basis, but you need to make sure that you follow if they are updated. There's a great. I normally post it on Twitter when they are, and I think there's a function. I forgot. I will post that on Twitter. How to the simple way to follow them. AD hygiene. Oh. No, you don't go to your Active Directory server and lift their arm and have deodorant under the hard drives. But I see a lot of cases where UPNs aren't there. There are strange letters in names and display names and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes Active Directory that hasn't replicated for a long time and these kind of things. This is really important. Before you start any DIR-sync or anything else, syncing metadata to the cloud, check your Active Directory. Because you don't want the crap. You don't even want the test mailbox from the deployment of notes in 19 or 1600, whatever. So get rid of test accounts and that stuff you don't use. You don't want to sync that, and you can avoid assigning licenses to people that shouldn't have them. UPN, user principal name, it's a thing of its own. I said that it should always be in the same format as your primary SMTP address. So my UPN should be magnus.bjork@altitude365.com, because that's my primary email address. Yes, it's a great thing, because my users will think that they use their email address to log on to things. It's technically not their email address, but even Microsoft says enter your email address. So it must be the same thing. I have tons of scripts to solve this, and it's normally something you can solve within 10 seconds. If you just have a look at the use ID fix, and it will tell you about this again, and then set the UPNs. And if you have a domain that's not that you can't choose in the drop-down, of just add that domain. And Twitter me or whatever, and I will happily give you scripts to fix this, but I didn't want this to be a scripting session. I want this to be, okay, this is the planning things we need to do and think about. DIR-sync. It comes down to this, what should we sync? Should we sync the entire Active Directory or specific OUs? I spoke about that, so I will skip that. MRS proxy. It's a simple thing, but if you do a hybrid deployment, you have an MRS proxy on your on-prem server, and it just gets forgotten to turn on. And what is MRS? Microsoft Replication Service. So it's used for moving mailboxes. So without turning it on, it's hard to move mailboxes. Actually, since CU6 for Exchange 2013, it's turned on by default if you run the hybrid wizard. So we will see less of those. In Exchange 2010, you will still need to do it, and if you run Exchange 2013 before CU6, which you shouldn't, by the way. CU7 is a great thing. And then we have this favorite topic. I saved this for the last because it's so much fun with certificate, isn't it? People just jump up of their chairs and scream, yeah, hallelujah, certificates. Sometimes, but not today. No, it doesn't happen too often. But why? What's the thing with certificates? You only need to see how do we get to that specific host. Can we get to our WAP or TMG or whatever going through AutoDiscover domain.com or mail domain.com or webmail? Yes. Okay, so those names should be in there. If we now add a hybrid record, should that be in there as well? Yes. And do we have a coexistence between Exchange 2013 and 2007, for example? Yes. Okay, so let's put the legacy name in there as well. And we have a working certificate. Those are seldom the hardest. The tricky part comes when we have a .local domain or something, and to see what certificate should be on the server and what should be on the proxy. Or there's not a silver bullet, but I tell you one thing. There's a great tool at one of the vendors. There's probably more of these, but I use this a lot. And it's the only demo you will get. So, okay, I'd give you one demo. It's this one. Does it show? No. Hold on, in a second it will. Come on. Oh, there we go. And now I don't see anything. It's from DigiCert, and if you have, you just enter a host name in there, and it will check your certificate. And that's a great start. Of course, you can use, it's digicert.com/help. And of course, you can use the Exchange Remote Connectivity Analyzer. It's a great tool for looking at your certificate as well. But there is one thing, and I should have mentioned that when I said AutoDiscover before and things that go wrong. There's one thing. We always check with the Exchange Remote Connectivity Analyzer, of course, and that could be super duper green. And still, our hybrid deployment wouldn't work. Anyone? It's about authentication. Because Outlook Anywhere can use NTLM, for example. And Exchange Remote Connectivity Analyzer can check for that and use that. But Office 365 can't. So you need to have basic authentication applied to your virtual directories in your Exchange on-prem environment. Did we get back? No. It doesn't matter because my last slide says Q&A. Any questions? Yes.
Do you know if there is a limit of how many domains can you add when you are configuring Office 365?
Yes, there is a limit. And you shouldn't take this as the definite answer, but I think it's 1,000. It could also be 900 because there's an EOP. But it's in that region. It's not less than 900. So if you're happy with 900, then you're good to go. But it's not I'm not 100% sure about the number. Was that a question? Oh, please. The time is always almost 10. If you wanted to know what the time is. Yep. Anyone else? One more.
Another one.
Yes.
Is it okay to add subdomains to the Office 365, but the root domain lives?
Oh, that's a horrible one. And the official answer is no.
What was the question?
Sorry. The question is it okay to add a subdomain to Office 365 without adding the root domain? We have a customer in Sweden that we do that for. And the official answer from Microsoft is this is not the way to do it. But we do it, and it works. And there is no problem, howsoever, except for ADFS. And we had this up and running for quite a while, and then a support technician from Microsoft, and yeah, I don't mean, but this is true, so true stories are okay to say. A support technician told the customer to update a record. And that totally blew the whole ADFS configuration. And we weren't aware of this, so when we were involved again, because no one could authenticate against any of the domains. It took us almost a week to fix this. Not to fix it physically, but to find how to fix it. And I tell you, I don't mean to brag, I'm not the smartest guy, but I've done a few of these things, and I have super duper smart colleagues. And it was a pain. And we taught the Microsoft guys how to do it. So, and we have a blog about that. So you can do it, yes, but I think this official answer is still no, you shouldn't. There's a lot of debates going on the MVP DLs about if it actually works or not. Good questions. Good question. Anyone else? Was it useful? Okay, so this is the only time you have to answer. And yes, when you do the evals. Okay, I have a session at 1:20, I think, about security. Otherwise, if I don't see you then, I thank you very much. Thank you.